Hi, welcome to my second game of the Intermezzo Season 12. This was the second game that was finished for the group, so not much has changed since from my first video. This game is between myself, Skaiwalker, and Klakla92th. Again, I'm probably just going to refer to him by KK um, this entire video. Just looking at Legion of Wonders, if we look at the row itself, we can see that Coliseum, Pyramids, and Library are all on the row at 3 civil actions. So pretty much no need to take a Wonder since there's such good options available. And there's still Roman roads possible as well. But basically all the leaders are out right now. So it's generally going to be a good idea to take a leader in my first opening phase, and then on round 2 I can probably take one of the other really good wonders. Looking at the leaders and wonders later on, things I would want to look at are Gates, Meyer, Einstein work well with spaceflight, but only spaceflight. There's no Manhattan. Pierre works really well with internet, and only Chaplin works really well with Hollywood. Notably, Marie is actually not bad with internet as well, since the labs provide strength, so it's kind of interesting just to note. And then, there is another Suez with Cook kind of idea. There's possibly Sun Tzu in the game with Columbus and Isabella to do colonization. Maria also kind of a colonization leader. There's Bach, there is Shakespeare, but Chaplin is the only theater leader to come up to transition from those. And then also kind of in H2, we also have Napoleon and Catherine, which are the more military focused leaders. Also, things that we want to see are there's Zizka. So if somebody does go for Sun Tzu, Zizka could be an issue. But then you still have Nostradamus kind of as the strength counter, but not really. I don't really want to call it that. But yeah. Also, there is a Gandhi, so if somebody gets a really big cultural lead with like Shakespeare and then hides behind Gandhi, that could be an issue as well. And then going down the science route, there's Leo into Newton, but that's really it. There's no Darwin or anything. So you just want to be like a pretty lab-focused game, is what I'm kind of getting at. There's not a big library payoff. You can definitely go libraries with Newton and Einstein, but it's just a little bit more difficult, I guess. Alright, so let's jump into this game. Skaiwalker takes Hammurabi over Cleo. They're both pretty close. Don't think I would mind either one. They're both really top tier. KK is going to take Cleo and Richland. Definitely what I would do in his position as well. And I have 3 leaders to choose from, and for me, I'm going to take Boudica. Since both of my opponents already took a leader, no risk of losing to Sun Tzu or Caesar. With the alternative bonus, I think Boudica is perfectly fine. Alright, Skaiwalker, he's going to do normal stuff, and then take Library. Widely thought of as the best Age A Wonder. I'm still unconvinced. One of the big reasons I'm unconvinced is because Library got a buff from the base game, and Pyramids did not get a buff. So there has to be a reason for that, right? Klakla goes for Pyramids, Cleo, and then starts building Pyramids and increases pop. I mean, that's fine. I probably would have just went with the lab first and then try and spike extra resources on round 2. But either way is kind of fine. And then last good wonder, I'm going to take Coliseum. This does mean that I'm going to leave Iron on 2 here, but the way I do it is that I still leave both Irons on 2, so at least Skywalker has to do that. Yeah, I just basically relegate myself to the person not getting Iron this game, but in 3-player games, Iron is not super valuable, or it's not as highly valued as it is in 4-player games. And there's Skywalker Seeds, which is kind of interesting since as Hammurabi, you do want a little bit of a hand just in case they need to defend, but I don't know. I'm not a huge fan of seeding right away as Hammurabi, I guess. Start takes iron, starts library, increases pop, and builds lab. So pretty normal things. Klakla also seeds, gets settlement, takes the other iron, finishes pyramids, and then starts a mine. Yeah, I mean, yeah. This is part of the reason I would have built the lab first, and if I build the lab first, next turn I get 5 science, I can go into iron immediately without having to build this intermediary step of the bronze. So just kind of just paying for it, I guess. I use frugality to increase pop. Start building on my Coliseum. I could build the lab, but the reason that I don't is because I take the urban growth, trying to save some resources when I do eventually build my lab. So next turn I can finish and finish the Coliseum and build my lab at the same time. Mostly because I didn't really have any other cards to take over here. So if I have to float an action, if I have to kind of waste an action, it's just gonna save some resources while doing so. Pretty good packs. I do have the Coliseum already. Can't really offer this open borders to Hammurabi, so we'll see if I actually want to or not. Alright, Skaiwalker restores iron, takes the breakthrough and the frugality. Not much to talk about there. KK seeds again. Takes the temple development or development of religion. Civil life and crafts are the other options. Takes Universitas, part of the reason why he kind of rushed out these pyramids. And takes Isabella and starts building on this. I would probably just not take Isabella here. I don't know if she's a very good leader. I've been really thinking about her more and more because she's just one resource production. But that's just so bland that I'm kind of feel like that Isabella doesn't really do enough. I know she has that colonization bonus, but yeah. I'm starting to find that Isabella just isn't like a super strong leader that you want to go for. So I just feel like taking a leader on 2, which is, Cleopatra is effectively the same leader at that point, that you just don't need to really rush it. I do. Okay, still wouldn't have been able to get a corruption with just 1 step. So I guess that's part of the reason why I want to switch. But I imagine if you just built a step, increase pop, and then take another card or something, that might be pretty reasonable. But in any case, switches to Isabella. Gives me the Code of Laws on 1. I will definitely take it right away. Finish, build a lab, finish Coliseum, and then take the reserves. Didn't have a lot of other options here. The warfare is possible. I already have Coliseum. Could take the frugality, but I don't have iron. I just feel like there's this possibility that I might need extra resources. I didn't actually offer any of these packs. I just felt like there's no reason to help them along since I have 3 military actions already. I don't really like offering the trade routes agreement unless I have an upgraded production building of one of them. So kind of hold that one as well. I'm going to discard it, or actually discard the open borders. Anyways, Skaiwalker takes irrigation, takes cultural heritage, increases pop, takes Code of Laws, and builds a warrior. He had 4 resources, so he could have. I guess he could not have finished library. Sorry. Yeah, pretty interesting. I'm not sure that I agree with this cultural heritage, but he does it so he can get the Code of Laws out next turn. I think that if one of his turns was to just increase his production, that would have been probably a better use. He already has extra science from the library and extra science from the breakthrough. He still has 5 civil actions from Hammurabi, so I don't think he's in a rush to get this code of laws out. KK seeds, agriculture, just goes for iron, which I don't agree with. I think that it's probably best to just start building on this Universitas. Held out on science for a really long time, so spending all of it on just the iron seems a little bit wasteful to me. I guess he can still finish next turn. So, there is that. I guess that makes sense then to start this iron since he can still finish next turn. Yeah. I do seed. Build a warrior with the bonus resources. Take Shishka. So I seeded border conflicts. Part of the reason that I'm going to take Shishka and switch into him so that I can be the strongest, because I want, since I am winning the border conflict on top, the way that I take these cards, just trying to slow down the deck basically a little bit. Not really going to talk about it too much, just want extra resources to get the swordsman as well, so just pretty normal things, I think. So Skaiwalker goes for the break, for the cultural heritage, then the code of laws, and then finishes library to kind of catch up on that science again. Increases pop, goes for knights. KK seeds. I do win the border conflicts, so that's pretty nice to see. Finishes Universitas, takes cartography, and uses last then upgrades mine, takes over growth. Yeah, seems pretty fine. Border conflicting this philosophy seems completely wrong, but I guess this idea is to build printing presses instead. When you have more resource production, you should probably keep your science instead. So I'm not a huge fan of grabbing. So I think that you should definitely keep the philosophy. And then instead of grabbing like these two, because he has a lot of resources, should have grabbed something else instead that might help him on the defensive side, since he doesn't have enough science for military techs and stuff. So going for cartography, brand circus, printing press, those are all kind of ambitious to go for, essentially. If you wanted more science, you could definitely go for like alchemies instead. Printing press just not a very building efficient for the amount of science given. Also, taking these knights might also have been useful as well, instead of cartography, urban growth. But Klakla is basically deciding that he wants to stay pretty weak. Anyways, there's a couple alchemies. I have no upgraded production, so I either have to go for alchemy or irrigation. There's 2 selective breedings. Skaiwalker already has irrigation, so I don't, and it's the end of age 1, so I kind of feel like maybe just getting a little bit of science is probably better than a little bit of food. So I seed Reign of Terror, since I'm Jishka. Probably not going to be the weakest. Also have Swordsman, so should be pretty easy to be one of the 2 strongest. Take alchemy, build a knight, increase pop, build a warrior, increase pop. My plan is to eventually build a 3rd farm, but either way I can go farm or warrior for the next tactic. Alright, I bid pretty minimal for this. Looks like Skaiwalker does too, but KK actually wants to spend a resource for this, which I think is kind of surprising. I don't know. Just doesn't seem. It seems just a little bit expensive, even though he has the stuff for it. He does want to put this population into labs or libraries or something, though. Anyways, Skaiwalker reveals the phalanx, goes for Leo, and then finishes his phalanx, upgrades a mine, So now he's at 7 strength, and KK is kind of in a situation where he can't get strength higher than 2. He doesn't have the science for it, so he won't really be able to defend Skaiwalker no matter what. He also spent a card on this historic, so he's definitely a weaker defense no matter what. So start of H2. KK goes for Printing Press, uses Urban Growth, builds a Warrior, increases pop, takes Knights, and just stays at 1 strength. I mean, he can't defend anyways, but he has 2 military actions, and like, yeah, this is why before I just felt like he should have just kept his science. That way, if he had more science buildings going, he could eventually get out these Knights in cartography to start defending more. But yeah, going for Printing Press, I think that it's kind of a waste of science in that sense. If you went for labs, you'd still have the same production without having the 3 upfront costs. You also probably could have figured out a different way to get this breakthrough, which is probably more important as well. But yeah. Alright, I go for the aggression. He would need 2 age 1 defense cards or 1 age 2. He already spent 1. And then I take the Himeji. It's kind of difficult for me to actually get out of corruption without it. I can't really build. Like if I build I need to spend at least 4 resources in order to get out of corruption because of the way that my food is stuck. Either that or I could spend the reserves and go for a population increase. But Himeji makes it so that I can spend all my resources. Also the benefit of going up strength again, so that possibly I can get a little bit stronger. Just going to glance over about how everyone's doing. Sorry, I think I need to just clear this menu. Everyone has 5 civil actions. I'm the only one with 4 MA. So my aggressions don't really cost too much, but Skaiwalker, if he wants to take advantage, has quite a bit of a cost of not drawing H2 cards. And then Klakla, he has a ton of resource production, but I just destroyed that library he built. So yeah, he's put himself in a bind since he can't go for military tech next turn either, and he just has to pray that he gets lucky to not face more aggressions from Skaiwalker, because that I will be probably going for the Enslaved next turn. Anyways, Skaiwalker also aggresses, goes for the Enslave. Luckily there's a lot of idle population, but yeah. Takes the breakthrough, takes Machu Picchu if I remember right. Takes Machu, takes the breakthrough, increases pop, and takes some corruption. So I think going for the aggression gave Skaiwalker corruption, but at the same time, it does kind of hurt blue just to lose that population. So I can see why it's done, but I think it's a big cost to take the corruption and not draw any cards. So it probably wasn't worth it. KK finishes upgrading his mines, takes patriotism, takes riflemen, builds a library so he can go for riflemen next turn, and only draws 2 cards. So he's had 3 H2 draws. So he needs an H2 and an H1 defense card. So I just go for it, but he can actually defend. So it's a little bit unfortunate, but it's not a big deal. There's coal, there's selective breeding. I want to increase my production, so that's just what I do. Start by increasing resources first, and then I'll take 2 food second. Skaiwalker goes for method. Now a lot of science production with Leo. And KK goes for Newton. Doesn't elect Newton, and then goes for Rifleman. So I think he's doing this so that he has the opportunity to go for 2 more units next turn if needed. But the Newton would give him an extra science, so it's also possibly relevant to go for that. Taking this cavalryman though, when you have knights ready, it's not necessary. Instead, could have taken the reserves. So you could have elected Newton, taking the reserves instead. It's kind of close either way, but yeah. I also don't think blue feels pressure to take government because there's so many available. So he just doesn't rush to take it on too. I think I did know that the uncertain border was here, so I was trying to push for it. Go for selective breeding, and one of the things that I'm looking at is what leader do I want in this situation. Catherine, Napoleon, they're all generally good. I could theoretically go for Bach, but here's the thing, is that I actually have pretty limited science if I'm only in alchemy. I could try to take this Harvard to increase my science production, but I have the breeding in hand already, and Rev Idea is also another way to get more science. So what I do here is that I think that Maria is a really good leader, and she can help in a lot of ways. So I'm actually just going to take her for my science production. By increasing food production, take the Rev Idea as well, and should be able to kind of bank up a lot of food, and then also get a lot of science from her as well. Also to note is that I am slightly weaker than Skaiwalker, so I'll also get extra resources income as well. I think Maria kind of just does a lot in this situation. Oh, and then I also take the reserves. I also don't feel pressure to take government. There's so many out here that I think I'll be able to get one of them, so it's not a big deal. Skaiwalker finish Machu Picchu, goes for constitutional monarchy, organized religion, and yep. KK takes seeds and reveal strategic. He wins it, but pays kind of a steep cost. There's 8 resources and a population for strategic too. It's kind of a steep cost, so yeah. Goes for Newton, builds another library, increases pop, takes strategy. Goes for Burton Circus, builds one, and then takes Republic. So this is kind of a very messy hand. A lot of technologies, only middling amount of science. This is like, yeah, it's not really where you want to be. I believe he goes for this Republic as opposed to the Conmon so that he can revolt next turn. But I don't know, it doesn't look great to me to have so many technologies in your hand, even though you only have +5 science. If you had like +7 like Skaiwalker, it'd be a little different story. Anyways, I see barbarians because it's kind of close between me and KK, but I'm expecting him to be the one losing it. At the very least, I know about it, so I could possibly be the strongest if that does become an issue. Reveal wealthy. Actually, just bid 1 unit and a card for this, but instead what happens is I win it for 2. And because I win it for 2, and I think I actually seeded vast territory in here at some point, I'm going to keep the card, and what I do is that spend 2. I'm going to be weak anyway. I'm going to be rebuilding anyways, so I feel like I can just rebuild directly to Riflemen instead. So since I was planning on upgrading one anyways, it just might be easier just for me to send those 2, keep the card, try to win vast, and then just rebuild them straight as Riflemen. Then I upgraded mine as my last action. So my production is really getting up there. My science production is a little low, but it's actually artificially higher. And my culture is actually higher than KK, but it's not until the next deck. It's not until here. Okay, Skaiwalker reveals knowledge of the ancients. This is really, really good for me because I have 12 science with the Rev Idea. Yeah, so it's just really good for me. Hopefully I found the right button. Yes, goes for organized religion. Builds the knights, and then goes for Ocean Liner. you know, he can finish the next turn, so it's still pretty good. It's not. It's also like not 100% necessary that he does go for it, but I imagine, yeah, it's like not 100% necessary. He could either take this rich land or develop this irrigation as his last action. I think it's best to just develop the irrigation like he does, and the reason is because this doesn't really save you too much, and you're gonna have 12 resources to do an upgrade plus ocean line next turn if you want. And it's nice to know that Skywalker is still nicely staying above me in strength. Alright, KK goes for a revolution, goes for cartography, takes the breakthrough, and that was just on a revolution turn. So it's pretty nice to be able to do all those actions and not be in corruption. This does mean that the Vast that I have seated in here at some point is going to be a little bit more contested, but he only has 2 military actions, can't save that many cards, so I'm still hopeful. Alright, I seed, reveal fast. Yeah, actually lose this to Skywalker. I sent, you know, my Rifleman card, and I sent an Army card, but Skywalker sends a whole Phalanx. It could be very expensive, it could be cheap. It really depends on what units he can go for. So what I do is that I think I am kind of mean, because Skywalker can only go for a certain amount of units. Okay, so first off, I think taking Vast when you have Ocean Liner seems really unnecessary already. If you plan on spending your resources building Ocean Liner and you already have your food solution, and your happiness solution, like, do you really need Vast? Is a question here. And most of the time, I don't think you usually do. So I do think Skywalker did pay for this. Overall, pay too much for this Vast. I want to compound his error by taking away the text that he would want to develop into. So at most, he does need to defend again. The most he can really do is just rebuild the army that he sent, and that really sucks from his perspective. So I go for the con one, take the 2 techs, and then I just keep upgrading production. I go for the farms first, because being Maria, increasing my farms also increases my science production, so I do probably want to get these both out since I have a Napoleonic army. I need pretty much as much science as I can get. Right. So looking at the turn, this is basically like the last turn in Age 2 that we're really looking at. So Skywalker does have to start thinking about leaders. There is Napoleon, Bach, and Shakespeare. Clearly not set up for Shakespeare. He's not even set up for Bach either, but those are just his options. So I imagine that there's still both theaters. Available, and there's a library right here. So you can kind of tell if he's going to go for Shakespeare or not now if he goes for that journalism. Which instead he just goes for engineering genius, reserves, breakthrough, and upgrades. So he's definitely passing on the journalism, or definitely passing on the idea of Shakespeare at all by not going for the journalism and not taking Shakespeare here. So probably going for Bach or Napoleon. They're both reasonable, but he's not really set up to be like a threatening military leader from Napoleon anyways, without any techs. And he doesn't have any theaters for Bach, so they're both not the best leaders for him. He's just going to have to deal with it. Alright, he does not get stronger than me. KK Seeds, Reign of Terror, hits Skywalker. Alright, KK, he takes Justice System, and takes Justice System, goes for it, takes Wave, takes Architecture, takes Urban Growth, and takes other Urban Growth. Basically just took Justice System to get out of Corruption. He's in a really tight spot because he never took the second selective breeding. It's something that he needed to prioritize earlier, and now that he has no access to population, yeah, it's not going to be it's not going to be a pretty game for him in general. I'm going to pause after my turn to take a deeper evaluation, but just the idea no population is there. Skywalker loses Leo. Anyways, flip developed territory. I believe I also seeded this one at some point. I win it for quite a bit. If you see I don't have any colonization, I have the one card, so I actually spend both units doing this. And I still think that this is fair for me because I don't necessarily want infantry anyways, and Age 3 tactics. I do know that Barbarians is this card right here as well, but I can easily avoid it. I think, sorry, I should probably note the fact that at the end of this turn, I'm going to have the highest culture. But being the weakest has the advantage of getting the Maria resource bonus. So I think that getting the extra yellows and the extra science is kind of a big deal for me. Allows me to more easily go into my military techs, and yeah, I decide that I just want to rebuild into cannons. I could have built, I think I could have also split the way that I built it, or I could have gone with a cavalry man and split it that way as well. But it's like kind of a hard call, exactly, since I don't know 100% what units I want. At the very worst, I can still back into this Napoleonic army, just building 2 of each unit. I'm definitely going to have the resources for it. I do plan on taking this efficient upgrade, and most of the tactics in Age 3 are more heavily focused on cannons. When I look at mechanized, or not the majority, but like a plurality of it, basically. So if I look at positional army, mechanized army, and entrenchments, all of them are focused more on cannons than pretty much anything else. This one's a split. And then afterwards, what you want to build afterwards is generally going to be, it's hard to say which one, if it's either infantry or cavalry, because the mechanized army splits it in one direction while positional entrenchment split it in the other. So you kind of have to guess what you want to do after the first 2 cannons. It's hard to try to bank on getting entrenchments mechanized army to since there's only 7 tactics total, and this is just 3 of them. So yeah, after the first 2 cannons, it's really tough to decide exactly what to build. Anyways, I do this so that I'm just barely stronger than Skywalker, so I don't get hit by Barbarian. Go for the efficient upgrade to finish my cult upgrades next turn. And then I think about going for journalism or operas or something, but I kind of decide that with the leaders that are in the game, Einstein, Meyer, Gates, I'm just going to try to wait for computers, or I'm just going to try and wait for computers, or maybe multimedias, or if I want to do something else, I'll go for this theater here. There's a pretty good chance that Skywalker took Bach in this theater, but I can't imagine that KK will choose this theater since he doesn't really have the ability to maneuver any more units around into it. Honestly, my assumption here is that he's going to take this wonder and finish it because he has like just nothing else to do since he has no population that's free. So instead of trying to take like the journalism or the operas or something in this turn, what I do is that I just increase pop and also play the reserves. So those are things that I kind of need to do eventually, and I decide to not take the urban buildings on 2 or 3 civil actions, and I just do all the things that are kind of civil action inefficient later on. And then I discard the autonomous territory finally. So some pretty decent impacts for me: impact population, industry, and culture. I can play around for any one of them, honestly. I have really good food production, but Skywalker also will have really good food production, or at least population production. Industry will be a little bit better for me than the others if I finish upgrading. And then culture is close right now, so it kind of depends on what leaders we get. Alright, sorry, that was the end of my turn, and I should probably do like a pretty in-depth analysis All right. So if you look at, myself and Skywalker, we have pretty similar economies in a certain sense that we have both are going to have a lot of population. Our science is actually a lot more similar than it looks. If I can increase pop like 2 times every turn, then I have an artificial like 6 science production as well. We also both have similar actions, relatively similar culture, production. I have a little bit of a lead. And then even our infrastructure is like relatively similar in a sense. I don't have a happiness solution completely yet, but yeah. Basically, what I'm trying to say is that our production is pretty set. We don't need to do anything. We don't need anything in any particular. Whereas KK, he desperately needs some kind of food production. He won't be able to survive this game without population. He's also in a really tough spot with having only 2 military actions. He does have the strategy, so that'll work out for him well there. But still, he doesn't have a lot of maneuverability. His the only ways he can really upgrade are up and not sideways, essentially. Yeah, so even though that his resource production and science production are decent, I think he's going to fall behind a lot really quickly. So Skywalker reveals the barbarians that I seeded a while ago. Increases pop, takes cannons, goes for Bach, goes for Opera, builds a cannon, and upgrades the lab. So he didn't finish the ocean liner this turn, mostly because he needed to do so much in terms of like just his other economy things. So I think it makes sense to just kind of like take a turn off from that, and he's still gonna get enough population out anyways. I kind of question the fact that he even took this ocean liner to begin with, and not well. Sorry, I didn't question the fact that he took it to begin with, but the fact that he didn't finish it right away by taking this vast territory is kind of an issue. If he just didn't do this vast and he finished the ocean liner 2 or 3 turns ago, it would have really paid off. But the fact that he had to spend resources rebuilding the units that he sent made this kind of like not a good pickup. So either the vast was not a good pickup or the ocean liner was not a good pickup. And since the ocean liner was the first pickup, I would say that probably shouldn't have bid for that vast, is what I'm getting at. KK does go for the statue, since it's basically the only thing he can do. Goes for architecture and upgrades. I don't know. He does have the science to do it, but I can't imagine that he should be spending science on architecture at this moment. What he really needs are strategies, military techs, mechanized agriculture. Yeah, which is right here. And he could have gone for this instead, but instead he chose to go for statue. And I think that's just a mistake. It just really is a mistake. Yeah. Like if he's going to spend multiple actions taking revolutionary idea, and you have 9 civil actions and your Newton, you can definitely just go for mech ag in this case instead. But he goes for statue, which was like probably the first, like his plan A, but when there's a better option available, this is what you should definitely take instead. So I did say that I was going to wait for computers and the like, and that's basically what I do. Refugees flips, Skywalker is the strongest. I've been seeding pretty consistently. I'm pretty sure I seeded refugees as well. I knew that I wouldn't be affected, so it's not a big deal. I was a second. I did get the extra resources, so I do build the rifleman to get a little stronger again. Use the Maria resources. But then afterwards, I go for computers, upgrade, and upgrade. I wasn't sure if I should have upgraded the lab or upgraded the mine, but I decided to go with the lab in case that... I mean, the lab is always a good upgrade, but in the very case that, Gates comes up, I really want the upgraded lab more than the upgraded mine anyways. And then also in the case that Einstein comes up, like, I'd rather bank more science. So I decided that in 2 of the 3 cases of the lab leaders, I would definitely prefer both upgrades to the labs instead of upgrade to the mine. And then in my remaining actions, I take the opera, which I could still speculate with chaplain, and I take the organized religion in case I actually do need a happiness solution. Yeah, so even though my culture production is low, I've been seeding pretty consistently. Maria's given me a little extra culture as well, and yeah, so I'm still able to hold my lead, and I'll still be able to hold my lead for a little bit. Skaiwalker flips emigration, finally finishes the ocean liner, increases pop a bunch, takes patriotism, and that's pretty much it. Yeah, I'm not even sure if you need to finish your ocean liner here as opposed to going for operas. It's kind of close. I think probably going for operas is better, but I can see either way, to be honest. Start operas, and then just start your ocean liner. Don't finish it completely, and you really have a bunch of population as well from your Machu Picchu irrigation and the vast bringing extra yellows. Yeah, I just don't know if you're actually going to have enough resources to put your population where you want it to be, especially since the operas cost a little bit more, since there's no architecture or anything. But yeah, population is a very good resource, but if you're not actually using those population, then it's kind of unnecessary, is what I'm trying to get at. He did also have like a lot of extra science, but not a ton of actions and stuff to get some really good techs out here. I imagine that communism also could have been a good pickup, but I guess he just wants to save his science for other things. All right, KK goes for the mech ag finally. Upgrades, takes Rev Idea. Plays Rev Idea, takes the reserves. So he has taken a lot of yellows and using his actions efficiently. So I do think that's pretty good. I do wish that he upgraded again, since he had a bunch of resources with his urban growth and wave of nationalism, and all he needs is pop. I think that it was very possible that he could at least have upgraded again at some point. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. Yeah, so he didn't even need to play the Rev Idea. He could have just upgraded again here and still taken these reserves. All right. I see it impacted population. It's kind of risky because Skaiwalker also has a lot of population to get out, but I have so much food that I figure that I can just keep pressing the population button and we should be pretty equal. So I see it impacted population before I really think about my turn too much. Initially, I thought that I was going to go for operas and chaplain. Because I didn't really think or I thought I would just go for operas directly and then wait for Gates next turn. But after thinking about it for longer, I decide to go directly for Gates. And one of the reasons that I do that is because I have the impact of technology in my hand. And I just want to get as much science as possible and kind of just build as many take as many Age 3 techs as possible. So instead of going for operas, I'll wait for something else that I can build at Age 3, so either multimedias or pro sports or movies. I also have a ton of resources, so not really limited by the cost of the increased cost from Age 2 to Age 3 buildings. And then as my last turn, I take the military theory. I also decide to spend one of Maria's resources. I do have this tactic, this mechanized army, so I could go into that. Unfortunately, I built a rifleman, but still, I did want to spend that one extra resource. I didn't need to, but I did. That's all. And then I take the military theory, of course. So, yeah, it's actually at this point in the game where I feel like my position is possibly unlosable. Um, that seems like a really big um, assertion, but I have a lot of population, I have a lot of resources, I have a lot of science, and I can easily get a lot of culture. Um, if I wanted to, I can just build 2 operas next turn, increase my culture production a lot. And then there's no way anybody can war me. I'm basically invincible because I have military theory and the mechanized army, and I even have a happiness solution if I really need it. So it would take a lot of work for me to be vulnerable, and I can even be offensive if I want to as well. But I have the highest culture. My culture production isn't the highest, but it should definitely be able to keep up when I have 16 resource production and the text for it already. So yeah, I'm actually kind of extremely confident about after this turn. And as a result, I do a lot of careless things as well. All right, Skaiwalker proceeds, flips Cold War. I thought that he would go for democracy here and operas, since he has so much science. But I guess he's worried that he doesn't have he probably doesn't have an H2 tactic, and which is why he does the turn that the way that he does. He takes the tanks and the modern infantry. So it looks to me like he has modern army, and just needed the science for his military techs. He also moved over a lab so that he also moved over a lab to opera, so he actually is losing science or lost science production here. So just the fact that he's banking 19 out of his 28 means that he wants modern infantry, tanks, and then also air force or military theory as well. But yeah, just noting that basically. It would be very expensive for him to be able to go for this military stuff, but he is just being a little bit on the defensive mind. He still increases culture production a lot. He just didn't want to spend 17 science on democracy. All right, moving over to KK's turn. Finally develops the strategy, increases pop twice, grab idea, take the rockets. Now he finally has all reasonable techs as well, and then goes for a defensive army. There we go. This is just a very expensive defensive army, since it's using rockets, since it's using all of the possible for H3 tactics. But, you know, it does show that he actually has relatively good potential strength. He could even technically have the other modern army with cavalrymen. So, yeah, definitely, you know, not as vulnerable as he was the turn before. I still wish that he spent a turn upgrading this, because he still needs more population. He really just needs more population. All right, I go for impact of strength. Yeah, I feel like I could win it if I wanted to. I have a lot of resources. I just didn't want to see the impact of technology yet. Can't really see the impact of culture yet. So yeah, I just go for impact of strength. Play the military theory, go for the movies, trying to build up that impact of technology, get the satellites, play that as well. So this is kind of a cost. I know that impact of population is in here, but yeah, I just kind of increase my strength, do things that increase my impact of technology. Yeah, I just didn't want to 100% commit to increasing population if I don't know the last H2 event yet. But that could be overly cautious, and I probably should just hit this population button more often when I need to play for my impact of population. All right, military alliance with me. Yeah, I think he does this so he can get be the strongest at the end of his turn. Takes military buildup, moves over the last lab, modern infantry, and then increases pop. So Skywalker is very, very, very prepared for that impacted population that I put in. Yeah. KK Seeds, it's iconoclasm. You can see why Skywalker switched. He probably knew that it was iconoclasm in there, actually. Increases his food production finally, builds a small library, builds another rocket, takes Einstein, and Rev Idea. I'm still not too worried about strength. Skywalker could go for military theory and tanks, but I don't know. I'm just not as worried as I could be. I just know that it takes a lot of upgrades in order for him to actually get all of the units to the right level. So I'm just not worried about it. That's all. I did seed. I kind of forget what I seed here. I think it's impact of architecture or something, but I'm not going to double check at this point. I do seed, flip industry. It's pretty fair for everybody. Take the civil service, take spaceflight, and then build some more movies. Build another cannon. I mean, there is some strength being pushed around, but there's no more H2 events, so it doesn't really matter too much. I just figure if I'm going to be susceptible to a war anyways, I might as well start building some cannons, and I have the cavalrymen to go for my mechanized army. I could have potentially played my cavalrymen too. There aren't actually that many cards left. So yeah, I could have been a little bit more cautious. But I kind of felt like it wasn't going to fall off. Anyways, Skywalker takes military theory, develops tanks, upgrades, 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 upgrades. Does a lot of upgrading, increases population a lot more as well. So he's like maxed out on my impacted population, and I did not hit this button nearly as much as I should have. I could, in theory, get like 4 more out, but I never hit the button. Klakla Seeds flips impacted population, so I only get like 14 versus the 22, so that's kind of a big deal. But again, like I said, I wasn't too worried about this game at this point. Goes for multimedia and takes a couple texts and ends the H. So I actually can't even get out my cavalrymen, but yeah, there's no wars that can happen. So I actually put an impact culture at this point. I have a lot of resources, so go for the democracy, go for the engineering, build the movies, and I can still defend with sacking, so I'm not too worried from Skywalker. And if you can see at the end of this turn, I'm the only one with the wonder. There's Hollywood that he could go for, but he doesn't have the resources for it. I'm the only one with the wonder, and the space flight is actually really, really huge. Something that's not, I mean, we don't really see my score, but you can see I have so many H3 techs out and H2 techs out that you can see that my spaceflight is really big. And not to mention, I'm also going to get a big bonus from Gates as well. So Skywalker, he doesn't aggress me because of my Himeji Castle. Goes for Klakla instead, who did not have that many military actions, so he didn't draw that many times. And then goes for a lot of strength, which I can't even match. I put an impact of strength not too long ago, like I said, and I just kind of decide whatever. I just give them points. But the impact of culture flips, and that one's good for me. Klakla goes for more upgraded buildings. And yeah, he's actually pretty strong at this point. 41, and if I still need to put in resources into spaceflight, I just give up impact of strength. It's fine. I have impact of technology with oil and mechanized agriculture. I'll be doing fine here. Impact of colonies flips. Go for those 2 buildings. Finish spaceflight. Fix happiness. Increase food once. So I do end really weak. I do end really weak. But the spaceflight was for 36. I know that I just put in impact of technology in, and you can see that my impact of technology is huge. So it's like another wonder. And yeah, this is a pretty big gap. So going into this very confidently. First is variety, which I'm very good in. Then it's strength, which was mine. Great impact seed, but it's whatever. Architecture, which I believe was Klakla's or KK's, because it's pretty good for him. Impact of technology, just absolutely a huge one for me. And then agriculture was probably Skaiwalker's, since he wasn't able to seed very much, and he built a bunch of extra irrigations at the end. So yeah, I still get the Bill Gates bonus too. So didn't really feel like too difficult of a game through most of it. I think Maria really gave me a very nice comfort zone for a lot of it. Just having that population available, knowing that there wasn't any rats and stuff, because I had discarded it early in the game, and then eventually being the person who was able to go for gates. Both, I did kind of take gates before Skaiwalker could get a chance, I believe, or I don't really remember that one that much, but me going for gates was like, I think a very I sealed the game with getting gates, or that's kind of the power of him sometimes, just having so much resource production. And the real big thing is that I had enough food production to go with all his resources. There were times where I banked up a lot of food, but in the end I still used all of my resources on very expensive things. So it is nice to have a ton of population for all the resources that you have, and just the fact that I had three selective breedings, just I get to go through my entire yellow bank, even with a couple extra tokens. So yeah, just basically, Boudica giving me extra resources, Jishka giving me extra strength, Maria giving me extra resources and science, and then Gates giving me extra resources. Everybody just did its job, kind of supported my economy throughout, and just gave me a big bonus. It just gave me a big boost at the end. There were times where the game looked like it was close, but I always felt like I was in a very, very comfortable position, and people had to play catch up on me as opposed to the other way around. And then the end game kind of shows it too, since I ended up about 100 points ahead. Anyways, this was only the second game that finished in my group at the time, so this makes it so that Skaiwalker is tied with, so I have 10 points, Skaiwalker has 2, and KK also has 2. The difference here is that KK has finished 2 games, and Skywalker's only finished 1. So that's basically the standings. There's only 4 players who have finished games so far at this point. Anyways, hope you enjoy this, and I hope to catch you in the next video.